me
Yeah.
move us down to the modern reception of your book.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Catholics around the country as well as around the Bay Area and the world are probably wondering, well, why haven't we heard this before? Why haven't we seen the facts?
Oh, that's the mission myth. The missions themselves have if you go to a mission that's run by the Catholic Church, you will not see signage that says the Indians were forced in here, they were beaten, they were whipped daily. You will not see any of that. But you go to a state park and you will see that signage.
In California.
In California, but in the rest of the missions that are still run by Catholicism, you won't see one word of how badly they were treated or the death rate, which is that 1/2 of the mission population of Indians would die every year. So each mission had about 1,200, 1,500. So you figure 750
My Lord.
times 60.
Mm-hmm.
Just out of that one mission, 700 times 60 is what? 4,200. Multiply that by 50 years. At one mission.
By one leader under the control of Serra.
No, well, the missions had their own, each mission had its own leader. But
this was a collective practice.
what?
These missions were being run exactly the same way?
Yeah, they were all the same way. Serra was the one that established the policies. And all of the friars had the same mentality towards the Indians.
Why do you think that is true? Why did they have the same mentality?
Because they had been told to. They had been told to, as things went along, each mission had 3 friars. They were like gods, kings, and they could do whatever they wanted.
So let's talk about the reception in the Native American community today. Your book has been out for a while now. You've spoken to the Commonwealth Club in San Francisco,
Yes.
but you've also spoken to Native American groups
Yes.
about this. What's
Yes.
the reaction?
Wonderful. We are so grateful that you wrote this book, which tells the truth of what really happened. And they will say, well, ours is an oral tradition. But now we have irrefutable evidence, because everything that's in my book is based on the letters written by Serra, Lasso, and his successor, Geronimo Boscana.
Is it a painful recollection, though, for the Native Americans?
Of course it is. They say, but they need it because of the missions. Their tribal lands were taken from them. When they were released by the Mexican government in 1833, they did not know where their villages were, or their villages had already been settled by other people, by people coming from Mexico, from Americans that were coming across from the East Coast. And in later years, 50 years later, they had no idea where they'd come from. Their languages, they had been forbidden to speak their languages, and there were about 100 different languages, totally different from each other as Chinese is to English. And so they did not know their background, their oral. In the missions, the first people that were singled out to be worked to death were the elders, who had all of the language, oral traditions,
The history,
medicinal
the knowledge.
history, knowledge, medicines. Those were the first to be given the hardest task, where they would probably die.
And did
very
anyone
soon.
ever bring Father Serra to justice, or at least try to?
No, of course not. I mean, what happened was this. In 1833, the Mexican government, fed up with the missions, finally, and with knowledge, as the Spanish governors had said earlier, that these were nothing but, death camps. Sending the Indians, they'd die there. And Mexico had that. And so their attitude, they didn't know about this. But California's up here, Mexico's way down here, 2,000, 3,000 miles away. It was very difficult to communicate. On top of that, they had the Gulf of California that separated. That was the moat. And to go to Mexico City, where the viceroy was, the Spanish viceroy, who was the king's representative in Mexico and all that area that he ruled, did not know about these. He had some inklings. One one friar, Orras, did protest and stated that the Indians were being treated extremely cruel. So what happened to him? Well, the friars declared him insane and said he needs to go back to Mexico as quickly as possible. He wasn't the only one that said that. There was another one before him. I can't remember the name, but it's also in the book.
So based on your research, they were simply ignored.
They were simply ignored. They did a mild investigation and found out that what he said was true. But that didn't do, But remember, this was early 1800s.
Right.
The Inquisition was still around.
A dominant, ruthless
type of
ruthless
energy right.
from the church, yeah.
You dared, it's lucky these priests were not called before the Inquisition.
Now, there are people watching that are going to say, now, I'm Catholic, I've never heard this. Do you have a vendetta against the Catholic Church?
No, of course not. No, I could care less. I mean, this is a story that had to be told. People must know about these missions. It's called the mission myth right now. And it's something that people need to know about these supposedly kindly men. They weren't kind at all. They were barbaric, and Serra was a monster in establishing the policies that existed in all of the missions.